I haven't been to CRF in a while, so this is fun. Not since it's been in this building. So it's so rude, Matt, not to have invited me, right? I'm actually terrible at email, text, any kind of communication. So today consisted of my wife telling me at a basketball game of like, you're going to CRF. So I'm extremely ready for you, don't worry. I brought my A game. Let's open with prayer real quick. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for this strange time you've given us, for this political season of upheaval. Pray that you would bless our time together today, but bless the years ahead of us as well. Make us faithful in them. In your son's name, amen. Okay, so I exist in a more creative space, both working out of New York and LA and just here in town, and made a decision a long while ago to be here in town when I was trying to do that. I was actually born at Gritman and have been here basically ever since, except for a short stint in graduate school. But I work sometimes with more political factions, but often with producers and the people who are freaking out about this moment. So if you, well, let's just say there's a lot of people who need support dogs to handle this election, with whom I am in regular communication, and they kind of know where I am on the spectrum, but they choose to forget, or they choose to ignore it, or else we wouldn't be able to work together anymore at all. So I am canceled in some corners. I gave up a long time ago trying not to be canceled, and it's just kind of a game of chicken with people, whether they want to cancel me or not. And at some point, they will, although things are strangely swinging. I wanted to talk to you today about the election, the post-election aftermath, the chaos you all are sort of really being greeted with in adulthood. You're being handed kind of a very strange meal right now at an interesting age. So as you come of age and really kind of like assume the mantle of the engine room, the energy in the economy, and you start to really drive the economy out of college, in college, but really on the other side of college, what are you going to do? How are you going to handle this moment? What's it going to be like? There's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of strange theory. There's a whole reality show that's starting up again in DC. And Trump really did cut his teeth as a reality show producer, and it's important to remember that. So as you're trying to interpret what happens around you and what you're dealing with, there are certain narrative arcs and themes and archetypes that are just being played to on purpose. It's happening intentionally, and it's happening at the level of God doing it. God still tells stories in certain very specific ways, but Trump does too. So Trump also, you'll notice, as he's floating his different cabinet picks, if you followed that at all, a very large number of them have background in television. Has anyone noticed this? The Secretary of Defense, Fox News commentator. There we go. This guy, head of transportation, Fox News commentator. And over here, we're grabbing Vince McMahon's ex-wife from professional wrestling production. Like, she's coming onto the cabinet. She's going to be the education secretary. What's going on? He's grabbing talent. He's grabbing people who are used to functioning in front of cameras, who can play roles, who can be characters. He thinks of it that way. He thinks of it as entertainment. He thinks of it as production. And he's going to try to give you lots of great plot lines for this season 2 return of the Trump administration. And I'm here for it. I think it's going to be pretty fun. At the same time, don't put your hope in it at all. Like, not even a little bit. What I would like to encourage you to do in your current spot, all of you are in Moscow, Idaho right now, is not to coast. Like, don't coast at all. And what I mean by that is just getting through your days, just getting through your weeks, just getting through your semester without a plan. Like, not planning, not scheming, not trying to be aggressive. All of you, wherever you are, should be thinking aggressively about what you're trying to accomplish this month, next semester, next year, and you should be investing in that. Now, some of that is just the rules. You should always be doing that. We should always be doing that. But there's also a very odd moment in time here when a bunch of infrastructure is going to be collapsing around your ears. Like lots of walls are going to be falling down, and you want to be in a position to go right past them, right through them, like get to the other side quickly. There was a moment, there's a lot of guys in the room, there was a moment in time not very long ago when applying for jobs out of college as a conservative, whatever they say, conservative cis white male was not the best. It was not exactly a great hand to be holding when you were trying to go apply for an entry position in a large corporation, even kind of. That's kind of crumbling away. That's going to fall away, at least for a little bit. Walls are falling over, institutions are going to be coming down. There will be upheaval. There will be a lot of, let's just say, froth and quaking, and you all will have opportunities to take advantage or not. So in this moment, I would say don't coast at all. Be aggressive with your goals, aggressive with yourself. Take what you can get and assume that you're going to have about 2 years. There's about a 2-year window, maybe more, maybe not. There will be a correction. There will be people pushing the other direction. Trump will have at least until the midterms with this particular show that he's going to put on, his slash and burn with his little team of superheroes that he's put together. At least 2 years of chaos before it could swing the other direction. And that 2 years will provide opportunity as well. So how is it going to reach you guys? Well, if the Department of Education goes away, it will affect you. There will be consequences, and none of us can really know what those are going to be. It just will kind of shake and rock a little bit as universities, like the University of Idaho, figure out how they now function, how they make their decisions, where they receive their money, and so on. The last time he was in office, he aggressively went after Chinese Communist Party dollars that were being funneled to the U of I and to basically every research institution on the continent, and it created a lot of strange snarls that you wouldn't even know where it was coming from. I expect a lot more than that to happen this time. But the thing I want you, this is really what I'm going to tie up in a bow, and then I'll open it to any questions about anything you all might want to talk about. Football, anything. Just remember that whatever happens, in boring times and in interesting times, in times of political chaos and times of political peace, the narrative laws of the universe do not change. You all are used to the idea of the laws of physics, the concept of the laws of nature, laws of physics, and so on, but there are laws of narrative, and they also just don't change, ever. And these are things that we're told. They're things in Scripture. They're patterns we see in history. But basically, think of them as the author of a story telling you what he hates, what he loves, and what he does. So something like, he who is excellent in his work will stand before kings. What does that tell you? What is it really telling you? Well, it's telling you how God tells his story with specific characters who pursue excellence in their craft. And then, in other words, cream rises. Cream rises. This is a world in which cream floats. Filth also often can float, but cream goes up. God says, as an author, as the author of your lives, he gives you a hot tip. He who is excellent in his work will stand before kings. Like, go for it. Invest yourself in really pursuing excellence in your craft and what you're doing and whatever you're called to right now. That's an example of a narrative law. It's coming from the author, and it tells you what his taste is and the kind of things he does with his stories. And we all can feel that too. So all of us could be a sucker for those underdog stories, for those stories of somebody who really invested in the backyard on the little hoop by the garage, and then ends up all the way in the Hall of Fame in the NBA. Rags to riches stories, like those kinds of stories, are stories that resonate with us in any different sector. Doesn't matter if it's in business, entertainment, athletics, whatever it might be, we are drawn to that. A buddy of mine who's a novelist, watching the election, was commenting that the left had stopped reading stories a long time ago, and so they put forward a very bad character. And they didn't understand that Americans can resonate with an outlaw, They can resonate with a bad guy. We've always had that ability to resonate with the outsider, the outcast, where you yell insults at him and he becomes more sympathetic to us. How do you take a born rich New York billionaire and make him sympathetic to down and out Americans? It's like, well, turn him into an outlaw, turn him into an outcast, call him all sorts of names, prosecute him, do all the things they did. And then for your type, go find a character who was a prosecutor, not an American archetype at all. Not the kind of person who's ever been the hero of our storytelling for centuries. Like maybe a few procedurals for the boomer generation on NBC, and that's it. Like we don't all resonate with a prosecutor, but everybody resonates with an outcast, somebody who's outside and being kicked. So his prediction from the beginning was a dominant Trump win prior to any polls, prior to anything else, just reading the narrative structure of two characters, which is interesting. You can actually do that. So examples of narrative laws, like I gave you, the cream rising one. Another one you've all heard, pride goes before the fall, right? Yeah, yes, it does. What does God do to proud characters? He lays them low every single time. They will always go down. And that is something prior to the last election that was obvious to me with Trump, too. The embarrassment and his downward arc when in the previous cycle was humiliating. Like he got humiliated. There was a pretty awful experience, and then he successfully climbed back, which is fantastic. But pride goes before destruction. If you become proud, bad things are going to happen. Like if you're full of yourself, before the foundation of time, God will have decreed that when you go for that job interview, your fly will be down. You will trip on the sidewalk. You will screw up your finances. If you're really, really proud of yourself, if you really trust in yourself and your own competency, if your faith is in yourself and you are very proud of that, humiliation is coming. It's coming. And it's just a question of when and whether or not you've gotten so proud that God's ready to take you down yet. Pride goes before the fall. To whom much is given, much is required. By whom? By your author. It's like by the one who actually gave you your bones, your breath, your heartbeats, who's kept you alive today and will tomorrow by his grace, and so on. So it's a little terrifying if you really think about this, but as you should. What did you do with your day? He kept you alive all day. What did you accomplish with that? Did you get him a return on his investment? And if you think about how you do not exist by any willpower of yours, there's no personal resolutions, there's no determination that will continue to hold you in existence. Nothing you can do right now can guarantee your next heartbeat. Nothing. It's just another gift, and then another gift, and then another gift. And we sit here literally being held alive with this spark and jump right here, and every single one of them is life or death. Every single one of them. And we don't even have time to thank God for them, and all of them are life or death. And today he gave you quite a few of those, like a lot. You still had your fingers, you've got your thumbs, you've got your lungs, you're sitting there walking around filling your wind bags inside your little bone cage here all through the day, staying alive. Oxygen to the brain, balanced on the outside of this ball of mostly lava, hurtling around a huge burning ball of fire in the sky. So here we are all going Mach 86, or whatever it is, perched on the outside of this ball, spinning through this supposed chaos, but actually intricately designed universe. And he has time to give you another heartbeat, and another heartbeat, and another heartbeat, and another month, and another year, and you got him what? What did you get for him? Like, what did you, in fact, get as a return on your investment? And are you even thinking that way? We inevitably kind of seek our own ease what will make my life easier? Because it's pretty hard. You know how we all flop over and let the planet suck us down horizontally for hopefully 8 hours a day? We just hold still on our sides, on our backs. The planet is pinning you down, and we try to make ourselves soft spots so it doesn't hurt too much for us to hold still like that. And then today you go through and you're like, oh, I only held still for 5 hours last night, or 4 hours, or 3 hours, or whatever it was. I'm feeling bad for myself. Had a terrible lunch. Oh, did you? Okay. Really unpleasant? Yeah, this really mealy apple. It's not good. Took a big bite of it. And those of you who know any of my writing know that I kind of can get really distracted by all of this, but it's easy to get distracted by, because here we are balancing on the outside of a planet, and how you walk is by perpetually falling down. So the planet is sucking you down, you put your leg out, and then you let it happen. Boom, you catch yourself. You're like, yes. Fantastic. Still balancing, except for those holding still times. Balancing, walking around. Take an apple, and what is the apple made out of? Kenny can tell me. What's it made out of, Kenny? He can't tell me. Come on now. You guys have been taught very scientific, materialistic words for this to make it seem not magical. But it is magical. So we like to put science words on things to remove the magic, is what we aim for. So an apple, let's start by what made it actually. What made the apple? A tree did. So a tree made the apple. What did the tree make the apple out of? Air. Made out of air. Starlight. Whoever said starlight? Who said starlight? Yes. Starlight is the mechanism, is the power, the energy that's used. So the tree takes the light from the sun, which is a star. Using the power from the star, it grabs onto your breath, CO2, rips it in half, and makes an apple out of air using star power. You then realize that you got a hole up here in the top half of you, lined with bones, tastefully lined with bones. We pay lots of money to straighten those bones. We brush them every night, hopefully. Got a bunch of bones. You take that thing made out of air by starlight, and you're like, I'm going to put this in my face. Shove it in there, smash it with the bones, pull that star power inside, and then go on to complain that all you had was one crappy apple for lunch. So I'm a little annoyed right now. Tempted past my capacity. The amount of gift that we all receive constantly from God is impossible for us to quantify. It just is not possible for us to even begin to grasp what God gives us. And then we get given really, really extra things like periods of chaos, politically, globally. Like we're done with the apples and the peanut butter and jelly and the fact that your hands are made out of stuff like that. And we're sitting here, you guys are in school or just out of school or wherever you are, and you're looking at a moment when a president is promising to smash everything and build it over. And he has a crazy Bond villain friend who's going to help him. And so you've got the guy obsessed with rocket ships and launches who's like, I will help you slaughter all of this excess. And it's going to be very, very strange for a while. It's going to be a strange moment, and God is giving this to you. In addition to your heartbeats and your education and your day and your month and your years, he's giving you this opportunity. And in the end, all of us, this is one of those narrative rules, all of us will give an accounting. Every last one of us will meet our author, meet our creator, and he will say, what did you get me? What did he invest in you? How many millions of heartbeats? How many days? How many periods of holding still? How much rest? How much food? How much opportunity did he give you? And what did you get in return? What did you get him on his investment? There's a farmer in Virginia Joel Salatin, who's been involved in a lot of regenerative farming, sustainable farming, that kind of thing, who thinks this way really effectively. And he said, in decades, I can say to my God, you put me on this dirt and I got you more topsoil and more earthworms. That's what I did with my life. I got you more earthworms, God. I got you better topsoil. You put me on land, I will give it back to you better. I will give it back to you improved. That's a great way to think. And God placed you all here. And the question is, are you going to give here back to God improved? Are you going to give the U of I back to God improved? What did you get God in exchange for the time he's given you there? Are you going to give NSA back to God improved? What did you get him out of his investment of those years in you? So when he places this investment on you, when he bets on you, all of us will stand in front of him and say, I got you this. What is this? What is our answer? What are we going to give him back in exchange for this life, for these heartbeats, for all those star-made apples? What are you going to give him in return for that investment? And thinking that way outlasts any political upheaval. So there's 2 years right now, at least, where there's going to be opportunities for you to capitalize on walking on the grass that used to have a fence saying, do not walk. You'll be able to go around and help change some things. On the left, I don't think realized what they did in COVID when they started shutting things down that everybody imagined would never shut down. And now that's in everybody's imagination of, we can just cancel stuff. We can cut down trees. And you cut down our trees, now we're going to cut down your trees. And the Department of Education is going to go away, and all these things are going to get slashed. That's going to happen. When God gives you times of turmoil, He's given them to you. He's investing them in you. And you are supposed to get him a return. So think that way with every opportunity. And he doesn't say he gives all the same things to all of us. Some of you are getting one education. Some of you are getting another. Some of you have a wealthy family behind you like Trump did. Some of you don't. Some of you are coming up poor, male, female, all these differences. We're not supposed to get the same outcomes. He knows what he invested in you. He knows what he gave you. He knows what opportunities he's given you. And he expects you to capitalize on all of them and not view any of these days, weeks, months, or years as simply boring things to get through. These are things to invest and capitalize on. Any questions about this? Or anything? I'm happy to talk about whatever y'all want to talk about. Yes, sir. Ultimately, it doesn't change what I'm doing. And that's one of the things that's important to realize is I'm grateful for the Trump administration. I am not stressed out about whether or not he's going to be successful. I'm not stressed out about whether or not he's going to be stopped. Like, that's not the question. The question is whether or not I'm going to be. Like, what is God giving me? Whether he gives Trump more days or more months or more years, that's up to God and his investment in him. What is he giving me? And if he gives me a time where Trump survives and he does get to do all this, I'm supposed to capitalize on that. And if he doesn't, like he didn't the last 4 years, I'm supposed to capitalize on that as well. So whatever God's doing with other people's stories, even stories that will affect us, ultimately doesn't change this mindset. But I can say I think that assuming that people will be trying to end him I think that's a given. There's no question. You can't talk as much trash as he has and pre-announced. It's a little dangerous to pre-announce all the crazy things he's going to do and incentivize big pharma and big farming and everybody else to make sure he does not actually take office, and then already know your Secret Service is really top-notch. It's a slightly risky position to be in. But it ultimately doesn't affect what I do with my next day and my next week or next month. Anything else? Or I'm going to call on Wyatt and make him ask something. Just prepare yourself. Anything else you all want to cover? Yes, sir.
Is there like a balance between enjoying the good God gave you and investing in, like, how much pleasure are you having?
Okay, so if God gives you something wonderful, right? Don't be stoic about it. What is a return on his investment? Well, truly appreciating it, gratitude, being motivated by it, inspired by it, Like something beautiful, if you have tasted something magnificent, if you've been given a beautiful sunset or perfect weather, it's not just like some harsh taskmaster who wants you to flip it and get him back $5 on a sunset. Like you're supposed to appreciate, see his artistry, you're in his museum, and that appreciation and that inspiration is what you're getting in return. So a really wonderful meal should be inspiring to you as well as providing energy. So it's not about just brutal, brutal, brutal. Like the farmer saying, I got you more earthworms. That's great. It's also kind of childish. It's kind of funny. If God gives you something beautiful, then that appreciation and that gratitude to him is a great thing to give him back in return. And then you also, chase it a little bit more. The rhythm of the Sabbath is wonderful that way. Actually, by baking in the times of rest and appreciation is really, really useful. And different personalities will break different ways. There's always those guys who think like the God is a taskmaster. God's really harsh. Maybe they had a tougher dad or a tough boss at the wrong age, and so they view God that way, like it's just grind, 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 grind. But this is a God who makes way too many beetles. Like just way too many. And one of the things I'm involved in is a nature documentary series. And Job makes a lot more sense to me, having had to work on nature documentary narration, and looking at God's artistry and craftsmanship and how often farcical it is, just truly and completely ridiculous. And there's always these humorous things, these jokes. So anybody here know where beaches come from, like white sandy beaches? Nobody? Come on, we're not going to even guess. Wyatt. Told you. Mostly parrotfish poop. So those tourist beaches that we love to sit on, one big parrotfish makes about 2 tons of beach sand a year. Just nibbling on coral, digesting all of the organic matter off of it, and pooping out white sand. Sea cucumbers also do this, but they do it more like pool cleaners. They just walk around the bottom, eating sand, digesting all the organic material, and then pooing clean sand, just walking around the bottom. So the beaches are all this great big joke. Like we all get together and it's just a little vulgar. We're all sitting there basking, and we don't think of it that way at all. But that is how God provides that. That's how he does it. He's like, don't worry, I got you fish that'll make these beaches real nice. So, and we love them. But so when we appreciate what he gives us, we want to try to find his personality and imitate his personality, become more like him. And so there's a temptation for some people to think that God is like that really hard high school coach you had, and he's just not. He really isn't. There's a ton of grace, so much grace and so much pleasure that he expects you to take in his creation. And it actually inspires and motivates more desire to excel and improve. I could go down so many strange little rabbit holes about nature. Anybody know how big a kangaroo is when it's born? A jelly bean. A 6-foot kangaroo is born the size of a jelly bean and is born wildly prematurely and has to successfully army crawl with 28 days old is what this embryo is. And this 28-day-old jelly bean-sized kangaroo has to army crawl up through the fur of its mother and find the pouch successfully and get into the pouch. Miscarriages for kangaroos happen on the outside when they can't successfully climb up and discover the pouch. They're only 28 days in existence, and they look smaller than baby mice. It's just weird, fully and completely. Anyway, not to get too distracted, I could go nature facts for the rest of the time, and I won't. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Slightly off topic.
Good. Marsupials could just take over.
So a couple months ago with the NSA ad, right, with Johnny and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that came out. There was a big ruckus.
Yeah,
episode with the Evan books and Blue Lamb.
yeah.
Yeah. So just when I first saw that, my first impression was I get the Johnny Cash and I get your explanation for that. This one, just first impression seems to not quite line up, but of course.
It's a bit of an inside joke,
Okay.
but
How does that work?
it made me laugh. So it was inside. No, my my dad he went viral in the last year for referring to people's Spotify playlists, and he talked about some kid in the back seat on the way to church and being in a bad mood. The parents don't know why, and he's listening to "effing on the blim blam," N-word in the vocative plural is the line that my dad used. And "effing on the blim blam" went viral. People are trying to figure out what, his pastor referred to "effing on the blim blam." So in that, it was a hat tip to his virality earlier in the year, or the effing bridge on the Blim Blam River. And we just played with effing on the blim blam there as a callback to that moment. It wasn't the kind of statement that the Johnny Cash ad was. So, like I said, it was mostly an inside joke. The Johnny Cash ad, and also this is important for you guys to realize, is that your generation can feel like stuff that happens on social media is real, and it's really not. So the Johnny Cash ad was not a big thing. It was a very small thing, but it was big enough to help the ad. And so when I'm doing marketing, this is just a comment on marketing in general, because you can see when it goes wrong, like the Jaguar commercial or Bud Light, things like that. But when you don't have marketing spend behind an ad, so if you have an ad that's viral, it's really useful. But virality happens only a couple of different ways. And in this time period, anybody with social media thinks like a channel. They don't think like a consumer. They think like a channel in need of content for their tiny audience or whatever it is. And so what you want to do is you want to have something come out that forces people to have an opinion, or they want to have an opinion and they want to broadcast on their channel their opinion and join the conversation. And the ideal situation is to push something so far that everyone feels as if they have to have formed an opinion. And it doesn't matter as much whether it's negative or positive. What matters is that they're forming an opinion and engaging about the thing, and then it continues to grow and spread. And so that ultimately is what the Johnny Cash ad was doing. It was making a particular statement about a type of masculinity as relates to idolatry, but it was doing it in a way that would cause a lot of conversation. And that was all intentional. And it worked. It worked pretty well. And when it backfires is like the recent Jaguar ad is the perfect example. I don't know if you're aware of it, but right now is the moment when a marketing agency decided to use all androgynous special friends in the advertising for a car, a formerly luxury car. Then you just watch the share price just go through the floor, like it did with Bud Light as well. Any other questions? As a side note, I could jump, I'll get this question, but shows like The Chosen, the thing that was so effective about The Chosen is that it reached that level that every pastor in every church felt the need to have an opinion. And when you reach that critical mass culturally, it's very, very productive commercially in terms of trying to actually have every single person engage, even critically or positively. It becomes really, really widespread. Yes, sir?
It would seem that you are pro-Department of Education, is that correct?
Sorry?
That you are pro-Department of Education.
No, very anti.
Okay. So what kind of returns on our investment towards the Department of Education in regards to resources can we expect to make it worthwhile for the
Yeah. So that's a great question, and I would take it. I'm not necessarily pro the interstate system, right? But I don't need to be pro or con. I don't have power over it. I don't have power over the Department of Ed. I think remaking the Department of Ed would be great. Localizing it or sending it back down to the states or whatever you want to do. And even county level, whatever. There's a lot of other ways to approach it than the way Jimmy Carter set up. So Jimmy Carter set up this way in 1979, and things have only gotten worse since then. So can we do better? Can we be better? Should it be a big federal department? I don't think so. I don't think it ought to be, but it is right now. And so I could think the interstate system shouldn't be here, and yet I'm going to drive on it, right? And I'm going to utilize it. I'm going to get a return on it. I'm going to visit family. I'm going to try to travel and benefit from it, even if I don't think that somebody ought to have justified it with defense spending. So the interstate system is a defense infrastructure that was explained as a way of moving military vehicles anywhere in the country, right? Whether that was right or wrong is not anywhere near my conscience, right? It's way, way, way over there. I have access to it. I have a car, so I can get a return on it. The same thing's true of the Department of Education. There are grants, there are student loans, there's programs there that I have no problem with people capitalizing on and utilizing in the meantime, even if I think Trump and his crazy South African friend should redesign it. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other? But yeah, I'm not in favor of it because I think centralized bureaucracy is a dangerous thing, and I think that the Department of Ed has really been the deepest state. The public school system is the intractable deep state that only manifests symptomatically at the surface, but what kids are being taught in kindergarten classrooms and first grade classrooms and second grade classrooms has more effect on our culture than almost anything.
So are there any other specific changes other than bringing it back to the state?
I think that's the only thing that he's going to do is kick it to the state. And then I think we'll have a fight in Idaho about what we do, and we don't tend to do things great. So we'll probably have a mediocre outcome of some kind at the state level. And I'm not too worried about it because I do think that rethinking things is a healthy pursuit for us right now. But in any time of revolution, things get chopped that shouldn't. And that's always a danger. And given that the people in charge are not organizing their thoughts according to Scripture or the authority of Christ, they're thinking in terms of efficiency, pragmatism, and so on. They're going to make some mistakes. But I'm not their boss, and God will be. So he will adjudicate whatever mistakes they make. Any other questions about any other things? Yes, sir.
On the recent podcast, I think it was Corey, the Soul Food,
Yeah.
you were talking about forced justice.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you comment on that? What is it?
What is coarse jesting? I can give you some examples. Okay, this is actually a really big topic, and I would back it up to wanting to be simultaneously more like God, wanting to become like God, but also being aware that we're not yet. And the thing that destroyed our race was the knowledge of good and evil, a desire for the knowledge of good and evil. There are many, many things in the world that we're just not supposed to know about, or shouldn't know about, or shouldn't look at, because they're not good for us. It's just not healthy. And we tend to struggle with that concept in a 24/7 surveillance state, no privacy world. But the knowledge of good and evil is a dangerous, dangerous thing for us. And so God can do what he does with the parrotfish, and I can find that amusing, but I'm also not going to just be constantly trying to shock and offend people with it as much as possible. And when people are involved in coarse jesting, what they're overwhelmingly trying to do is create social awkwardness for the purpose of humor. And so they're trying to trot something out that is vulgar, obscene, And obscene just means off stage. So something that should have been off stage is now on stage. Variations of TMI, or just kind of gleefully reveling in those aspects of reality that are meant to be off stage. So coarse jesting ultimately manifests as people trying to make other people uncomfortable for humor. So that's how it plays. So people try to step across a line, step across a taboo, create a reaction, and that's the way it works. Scripture tells us not to be involved in coarse jesting, and the way I interpret that is just not to revel in vulgarity, like not to take a lot of pleasure in the vulgar or the obscene. That doesn't mean pretend like it doesn't exist, but there's a big difference between, let's go to Noah. Noah is lying naked in his tent. It's like he obviously is in sin. He got himself drunk as a skunk, and he's unconscious and in the nude. And you got one son who takes the opportunity to coarse jest, to mock the nakedness. Now, the fact that his father has created a vulgar joke of himself is the case. Noah has done that, and yet the person who then revels in it, who revels in that vulgarity, revels in that obscenity, is also judged. The person who takes the opportunity to avert the gaze, to cover the nakedness, is honored. And that's really kind of what we see. So people who want to be telling fart jokes, and they want to be talking in lewd, crude, vulgar, obscene ways, and they tend to do it either if you're in a group of guys to belong, to fit in. If you're in other groups, you could be trying to shock and awe, to trying to steer and control things by means of people's uncomfortableness is just not mature or wise. So are we trying to revel in something that is designed to be hidden away, should be private, should be off screen, or are we actually acting more like Shem did with Noah's nakedness and covering him and moving on? And this is, I describe like birth videos, birth photos. It's like, that's not jesting, right? But there's things that should be over there, and just because it happened in God's world and God did it, doesn't mean that everyone should be looking at it. Doesn't mean that we should all be in the birthing room with them. And not with the video and not with the graphic description either, if that makes sense. And there's a lot more that could be said there, but the big thing is the knowledge of good and evil is not necessarily healthy for you, and is frequently unhealthy. And not just the knowledge of evil, but the knowledge of good can be destructive as well, which is harder for us to get our heads around. And the birth is an example of that. That can be a good thing, but it's just not for everybody. And the knowledge of evil, you could be reading a true crime description. You could be reading crime scene, interrogations. You could say, well, this happened. I like true crime. I want to read up. I want to look at all the pictures. Why? Like, what's wrong with you, actually? Because something is. It's not actually it's not a good thing for you to be doing that. Some people have to, and they're called to it, and others shouldn't be pursuing it as entertainment. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How do you look at, a character like Trump, with that outcast story that we like to associate with, versus maybe a character like Andrew Tate, where it's like trying to portray this like
Roar.
toughness,
Yeah.
like, masculine thing, but it's more deceptive, I guess, or not. Like, how do you distinguish those two things?
Tate is deeply insecure. And so there's this front. He's got all this braggadocio and everything else. Trump, the best thing about Trump, the thing that makes him almost invincible politically, and people don't think of him this way, is the fact that he doesn't take himself seriously. And so his dance is stupid, yes? It's a pretty dumb dance. He knows it's dumb. Everybody else knows it's dumb. They're having a lot of fun doing it. But for some reason, when if the UFC fighter, John Jones, just won and he's out there doing the Trump dance and he's loving on Trump, but he's doing this dance, Trump's not feeling insulted. Everyone's making fun of him, or are they? Like, he's willing to be laughed at, he's willing to become that joke. And he does it really, really well. That includes him telling a late night host to pull on his hair. I mean, like, he's orange. The dude is orange. And his hair is a living creature. And he's having somebody pull on it. He's not self-serious. And when he occasionally gets into that self-seriousness, which he does all the time, talking about how he did something amazing or whatever, he'll start hyping himself, being his own hype man. People bite and they attack him and they try to make fun of him because it looks like a weakness. And then he continues to not be self-serious. So it's really interesting. It's powerful. People who can laugh at themselves are almost invincible. And whenever you're speaking, if you're ever in front of anybody, but if you're speaking to a small group, to a friend, or it doesn't matter, like, a parent, family member, and you have something that you think matters, they need this from you. Whether it's an opportunity, truth, confrontation, rebuke, whatever it might be, you have to think of yourself as like a UPS man in really dorky looking brown shorts. And it's not about you. It's not about how cool you look. It's not about whether they're impressed. It's about whether this thing that you have gets into their hands. And you see this actually as God trains his prophets. So when God trains his prophets, he does things like saying, how about you go naked for 3 years? Can you imagine how little you would care about what other people thought 3 years in? Like, 3 years of that, of just shame and humiliation. And by then, you have fear of no man by then. It's just all your nerve endings are dead socially. Like, you have no social nerve endings. And he does this by sending guys into the wilderness, and they're eating insects, hair shirts. Hey, you go marry a prostitute. You cook all your dinner over dung. The way he trains his prophets, the way he trains his messengers is to become completely immune to what people think of them. And incidentally, that's the opposite of what we do with social media and people who try to engage, is we actually heighten people's vulnerability to what apparent people think of them. Like, we elevate it over and over and over again and get it really, really heightened so that we struggle to be laughed at. Like, how many people could still send out a tweet knowing that 5,000 people are going to clown them in response? You're going to go viral as an idiot. You're going to go viral because you fell down awkwardly and somebody posts the video. How many people can handle that? And we all need to be able to. So if you're the UPS guy, whatever your message is for whichever group it is, you don't care whether the socks look good. You don't care about the shorts or the dorky looking van. Just get this into their hands. Your goal is to get them to take ownership of this thing that you have, this message you have for them, and then to get back out of there. And that is ultimately, I think, what Trump has done very, very well. He has his shtick and he has his mannerisms, but he has this imperviousness, this absolute imperviousness to what other people think. He's willing for them to all do his dance. He's willing for them to grab his hair. He's willing for all that to happen. And then Elon Musk is just autistic, which is the same superpower. So, he's also immune. He's also completely immune to what anybody might think of him. And for good and ill. The guy should have had fewer children with fewer women. And so both of them should have. But, they're both impervious to that crowd response, which is going to make them interesting to watch. Okay, I got time for one more if you want, and then I'm going to bail on y'all. Yes, sir.
So you define force testing, but it seems that the way that you defined it was describe a nature of something as it was on the cash. And so although you've explained its advantage in marketing standpoint, I don't quite understand how you're able to justify it.
Yeah, but it's not coarse jesting. So coarse jesting is like a fart joke, which I would not have put in that ad. But the condemnation, so for good or ill, in our language, the strongest condemnation, the strongest expression of distaste and hate that we have happens to be the mighty, mighty F-bomb, right? And that expression. We don't have one past that. That's the volume turned all the way up. If we had one past that, I would have used it. So even there, though, when it first went in, the first edit, and then I went back and watched it, I had the editor crop in, so it was almost invisible, and it was a pop out and go. So it was this microsecond. We weren't sitting there wallowing on it and and then having a bunch of people do it. We're just talking about a particular attitude. We're looking for a type of student who has a willingness to express, like a minor prophet. I mean, that's nowhere near what Ezekiel said, what Johnny Cash is doing. Willing to express that ultimate disrespect and loathing for idolatry that we have available in our culture. So it wasn't a coarse jest any more than Ezekiel, when Ezekiel's talking about the whoring of Israel and starts condemning Israel and starts doing it in very graphic terms. It's a condemnation there, not a jokey joke. You know, he's not doing it for laughs. He's doing it very, very differently there. And we weren't doing it for laughs at all. But we were aware that people would be more concerned about saying we want a Christian who's willing to flip off idolatry than they are about all the drag queens in the idolatrous Lord's Supper in the frame right after it. And Christians and conservatives love to self-police. They love to scold each other because they'll actually listen to each other. And they spend a lot of time doing that instead of engaging with the enemy. So, for example, I think that if we took the modern church and put us all in the valley of Elah when David came out and started talking smack to Goliath, there would be plenty of pastors listening to David's insults who would then be like, ooh, that's not winsome. Just, I mean, do we have to take his head off, literally? I mean, there'd be all these concerns about him going too hard in that moment. And you see that around all the time. And actually that's not unique to that kind of talk. Conservatives love to criticize each other and police each other and fragment. It's a hobby of ours we're very, very fond of. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions that you might have that you didn't want to throw out in public. It's really fun to be here and see the dynamics of CRF currently. I would say the swing towards guys is definitely a real thing here, Matt. I remember like 8 years ago, it would be like 3 dudes and a room full of girls. And one of those guys was Mr. Gray. So anyway, thank you.